The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council shimmered with an otherworldly glow. Crystal chandeliers floated above, casting prismatic light across rows of alien delegates seated in tiered platforms. At the center of it all stood humanity's representatives. Captain Ilara Vance, her silver uniform gleaming under the artificial suns, and Ambassador Rylan Cross, his face calm but resolute. They had fought hard for this moment, decades of diplomacy and sacrifice culminating in Earth's acceptance into the interstellar coalition. But today, everything was about to change. Ilara glanced at Rylan as he rose to address the assembly. His voice echoed through the chamber, steady and clear. "We are here not just as humans," he said, "but as partners ready to contribute to the prosperity of all sentient beings." The words felt hollow now, drowned out by murmurs spreading like wildfire among the gathered species. Something wasn't right. A hulking Zarnok delegate, their kind known for brute strength and unyielding pride, stood abruptly. Its deep growl reverberated through the room. "Enough of these lies," it bellowed. "Your species is reckless, greedy, and dangerous. You smuggle weapons to war-torn colonies, fueling conflict for profit." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ilara stiffened. She turned sharply toward the massive holographic screen that dominated one wall. Evidence flashed before them. Grainy images of human ships docking at outlaw stations, cargo manifests marked classified, intercepted communications suggesting collusion. It was damning, but she knew none of it was real. "This is nonsense," Rylan shot back, his tone sharp. "These accusations are baseless fabrications designed to undermine us." But the damage was done. A murmur of agreement swelled around the chamber. Many of the alien delegates exchanged knowing looks, their expressions ranging from disdain to outright hostility. Humanity had always been seen as the newcomers, the upstarts who clawed their way into the galaxy despite being centuries behind technologically. Now, they were being painted as criminals. At the head of the council table, the Arbiter, a towering figure cloaked in flowing robes of iridescent fabric, raised a hand for silence. Their voice boomed, cold and final. "The evidence has been presented. Humanity's actions violate the core principles of this council. For the safety of the galaxy, we must act decisively." Ilara clenched her fists. Her heart pounded as she watched the vote unfold. Species after species raised their hands or signaled digitally in favor of expulsion. There would be no debate, no chance to defend themselves properly. The decision was unanimous. "You are hereby stripped of your rights and privileges within the Galactic Council," the Arbiter declared. "All trade agreements are nullified. All diplomatic channels are severed. Leave this chamber and do not return." Security drones descended silently, escorting Rylan and the rest of the delegation out. Ilara lingered a moment longer, her piercing gaze sweeping over the assembly. Some avoided her eyes, others stared back smugly. She wanted to shout, to demand answers, but what good would it do? Instead, she turned on her heel and followed her team out, every step heavy with anger and humiliation. Outside the chamber, Captain Vance stopped abruptly, staring at the sleek lines of her command ship docked nearby. Her jaw tightened as she whispered to herself, "They think they've destroyed us, but they've only made us stronger." Little did the Council know, humanity wouldn't go quietly into the shadows. This betrayal wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something far greater. The galaxy turned its back on Earth. Trade routes once bustling with alien freighters fell silent. Hyperspace lanes, the lifeblood of interstellar travel, were blocked by Council-enforced barriers. Colonies on distant moons and planets, once thriving hubs of commerce and culture, were left to fend for themselves as supplies dwindled. Humanity had been cast out, branded as pariahs. But even in the depths of despair, a spark of defiance burned. Captain Ilara Vance stood aboard her flagship, the Aegis Dawn, gazing at the blue-green orb of Earth from orbit. The planet looked peaceful, almost serene, but she knew better. Below, billions struggled to adapt to their new reality. Factories that relied on imported materials sat idle. Food shortages plagued cities. Panic spread like wildfire across news feeds, and protests erupted in every major metropolis. Yet, amid the chaos, something remarkable began to take shape: resilience. Ilara wasn't alone in refusing to give up. Back on Earth, Dr. Isaac Kwan, a wiry man with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind, had already begun rallying humanity's brightest minds. In a repurposed aircraft hangar outside Shanghai, he gathered engineers, scientists, and thinkers. "We can't rely on anyone else anymore," he told them during one late-night meeting. His voice was calm but firm. "If we want to survive, we have to build our own future." Under his guidance, teams worked tirelessly to reverse engineer salvaged alien tech, scavenged from derelict ships and abandoned colonies. Old military vessels were stripped down and rebuilt into mining drones capable of harvesting asteroids. Solar arrays were expanded to power entire regions. Innovations born out of necessity flourished. For the first time in decades, humanity wasn't just copying alien advancements. They were creating something uniquely their own. Meanwhile, Ilara took charge of securing what remained of Earth's scattered colonies. With no reinforcements from the Council, many had fallen prey to opportunistic megacorporations, eager to exploit the void left by galactic law enforcement. One such colony, located on Io 7, a barren moon orbiting a dying star, was overrun by corporate enforcers who seized control of its titanium mines. When Ilara arrived with a small fleet, the colonists greeted her with tears of relief. "We thought you'd forgotten about us," said Mara, the colony leader, her face streaked with grime and exhaustion. "Forget you," Ilara replied, her tone steely. "Never. We're all that's left of humanity now. And we protect our own." Using guerrilla tactics and improvised weapons crafted from scrap metal, Ilara's crew drove the corporate forces off Io 7. It was a small victory, but it sent a message: humanity wasn't defeated. Word of the operation spread quickly through unofficial channels, reaching other isolated colonies. Hope flickered where there had been none. Back on Earth, public morale began to shift. Stories of ingenuity and bravery inspired people to action. Communities banded together to grow food, repair infrastructure, and share resources. Schools taught children not only science and math, but also survival skills. Slowly but surely, humanity adapted, not just to survive, but to thrive. Yet whispers of discontent lingered. Some argued that focusing solely on self-preservation was short-sighted. Others dreamed bigger, envisioning a day when humanity could reclaim its place among the stars, not as supplicants, but as leaders. Ilara often found herself thinking about those dreams late at night, staring at the stars beyond her viewport. "They threw us away," she muttered to herself one evening, her reflection faint in the glass. "But they'll see. They'll all see." Earth may have been exiled, but it wasn't finished. From the ashes of betrayal, a new chapter was beginning, one defined not by fear, but by determination. In a dimly lit conference room, buried deep beneath Earth's surface, Captain Ilara Vance faced a group of humanity's most brilliant minds. The air was thick with tension, and the faint hum of servers processing endless streams of data. Maps of star systems, schematics of alien technology, and hastily scribbled equations covered every available surface. This wasn't just a meeting. It was humanity's last chance to decide its future. "We can't keep living like this," said Dr. Isaac Kwan, pacing back and forth. His voice carried both urgency and conviction. "We've survived exile, but survival isn't enough. We need purpose, direction." Ilara leaned forward, her arms resting on the table. "What are you suggesting?" she asked, her sharp eyes locked onto Kwan. Kwan stopped pacing and turned to face the room. "The Council betrayed us because they're corrupt. Their laws protect the powerful while crushing everyone else. If we want to truly move forward, we don't rebuild under their rules. We rewrite them." A murmur rippled through the assembled leaders. Some nodded in agreement. Others exchanged skeptical glances. It was a bold idea, almost reckless. But it resonated with something deep within Ilara, a spark of hope that had been smoldering since their expulsion. "What does rewriting the rules even look like?" asked General Marcus Hale, his gruff voice cutting through the murmurs. He was a soldier first and foremost, more comfortable with action than philosophy. "Are we talking about starting another war? Because I'm not sure we're ready for that." "No," Quan replied firmly. "Not war. Not yet, anyway. I'm talking about building something better. Something fairer. A system where power isn't hoarded by a few elite species, but shared among all who contribute. Call it the Free Systems Alliance." The name hung in the air, heavy with possibility. Ilara let it sink in before speaking. "An alliance," she said slowly, testing the word. "For who? Just humans?" Quan shook his head. "No, for anyone oppressed by the Council. Marginalized colonies, rogue traders, even alien species tired of being stepped on. If we offer them a real alternative, a chance to thrive without bowing to tyranny, they'll join us." The room fell silent as the weight of his proposal settled over them. It was daring, audacious even. But it also made sense. Humanity couldn't fight the entire galaxy alone. They needed allies, and what Quan proposed wasn't just survival, it was revolution. Still, doubts lingered. Ambassador Rylan Cross, seated quietly in the corner, finally spoke up. "It's a beautiful dream, Isaac," he said, his tone measured. "But dreams don't feed people or defend colonies. How do we convince others to trust us when we're still struggling to hold ourselves together?" Ilara stood, her presence commanding attention. "By showing them we mean it," she said firmly. "We start small. Help one colony, one group, one species at a time. Show them what we stand for. And when they see we're serious, they'll come to us." Her words ignited a flicker of determination in the room. Plans began to take shape. Outreach teams would be sent to neighboring systems, spreading the message of the Free Systems Alliance. Engineers worked overtime to develop prototypes of affordable, sustainable technologies they could share with potential allies. Even propaganda campaigns were drafted, highlighting humanity's resilience and vision for equality. As the meeting broke up, Ilara stayed behind, staring at a holographic map of the galaxy projected onto the wall. She traced her finger along the borders of Council-controlled space, imagining a new frontier beyond those lines. "They tried to bury us," she whispered to herself. "Instead, they gave us roots." Outside, Earth continued to rebuild, not just physically, but spiritually. The seeds of rebellion had been planted, watered by hope, and nurtured by necessity. For the first time since their exile, humanity wasn't just surviving. They were dreaming of a brighter future and preparing to make it real. The distress signal came in faint but clear, crackling through the static of deep space. It wasn't in any human language, nor was it one of the standardized Galactic Council codes. Instead, it pulsed in rhythmic tones, alien yet decipherable. Captain Ilara Vance sat bolt upright in her command chair aboard the Aegis Dawn, her sharp eyes scanning the data streaming across her console. "This is coming from the Valeth homeworld," said Lieutenant Cole, his fingers flying over his panel as he decoded the transmission. "They're under attack." Ilara's jaw tightened. The Valeth were a peaceful aquatic species known for their shimmering bioluminescent skin and intricate coral cities beneath the oceans of their planet, Valos Prime. They had long been exploited by the Council's megacorporations, who mined their waters for rare minerals while disregarding the environmental devastation left behind. Now it seemed, those same corporations had escalated their greed into outright violence. "Prepare a strike team," Ilara ordered, rising to her feet. "We're going in." The decision wasn't made lightly. Humanity's resources were still stretched thin after years of isolation, and every ship, every soldier counted. But this was more than just an act of charity. It was an opportunity to prove that the Free Systems Alliance wasn't just talk. If they could help the Valeth, They could show the galaxy what humanity stood for: justice, compassion, and defiance against oppression. The Aegis Dawn emerged from hyperspace near Velos Prime, its sleek hull glinting in the light of the system's dying sun. Below them, chaos reigned. Corporate warships loomed over the planet's surface, their beams carving scars into the once pristine oceans. Escape pods launched sporadically, carrying terrified Veloth fleeing their ruined homes. Ilara wasted no time. "Deploy drones to intercept enemy fire," she commanded. "Focus on disabling, not destroying. We don't want unnecessary casualties." Her crew sprang into action with practiced efficiency. Salvaged alien tech had been repurposed into ingenious weapon systems, giving the Aegis Dawn capabilities far beyond its original design. Drones swarmed around the corporate fleet, jamming communications and targeting critical systems. One by one, the massive ships faltered, their weapons silenced. Meanwhile, ground teams led by General Marcus Hale descended to the ocean floor in submersible craft. The sight that greeted them was heartbreaking. Coral towers reduced to rubble, schools of luminescent fish floating lifelessly in the water, and frightened Veloth huddled in makeshift shelters carved into the seabed. "We're here to help," Hale said, his voice transmitted through translation software. His words sparked cautious hope among the survivors. Slowly, they began to emerge, their glowing bodies casting soft light in the murky depths. Back in orbit, Ilara watched as the tide turned. The corporate forces, caught off guard by humanity's unexpected intervention, retreated hastily. As the last of their ships fled the system, cheers erupted aboard the Aegis Dawn. But Ilara remained focused. This victory wasn't just about driving away oppressors, it was about forging alliances. When the battle ended, the Veloth elders approached her via hologram. Their leader, Elder Tizura, spoke haltingly but with gratitude. "You have saved us when no one else would. For this, we pledge our loyalty to your cause." Ilara nodded solemnly. "Your fight is now ours," she replied. "Together, we'll make sure no one suffers like this again." News of the operation spread quickly. Rogue traders whispered about humanity's daring rescue mission. Oppressed colonies dared to dream of freedom. And somewhere in the shadows, other alien species began to take notice. The Free Systems Alliance had taken its first step, not as conquerors, but as liberators. As the Aegis Dawn departed Velos Prime, Ilara gazed at the receding planet. "That's how you win allies," she murmured to herself. "One act of courage at a time." Humanity wasn't rebuilding alone anymore. They were building something bigger, a movement. And the galaxy was starting to pay attention. The aftermath of the Veloth liberation rippled across the galaxy like a shockwave. News of humanity's bold intervention spread through unofficial channels. Encrypted messages, smuggled data chips, and whispered rumors in shadowy cantinas. For the first time in decades, oppressed species and colonies dared to hope. The Free Systems Alliance wasn't just an idea anymore. It was a tangible force challenging the Council's iron grip. But defiance came at a cost. In the weeks following the operation, the Galactic Council issued harsh condemnations, branding humanity and its allies as terrorists. Corporate-controlled media painted the rescue mission as reckless aggression, twisting facts to justify their narrative. Yet, despite the propaganda, cracks began to form within the Council's ranks. Some alien delegates privately questioned whether suppressing rebellion with brute force was sustainable or even ethical. Captain Ilara Vance knew the fight was far from over. Back on Earth, she convened another meeting with her advisors, including Dr. Isaac Kwan and General Marcus Hale. "They're scared," Ilara said, leaning forward on the table. "Scared enough to call us terrorists. That means we're hitting where it hurts." Kwan nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Fear is good. It shows they're vulnerable. But fear alone won't bring them down. We need proof, evidence that exposes their corruption to the entire galaxy." It was then that an unexpected ally emerged, the Luminae. A bioluminescent aquatic race similar to the Veloth, but far more advanced. The Luminae had long operated in secret, avoiding entanglement with the Council. Their ambassador, Silora, contacted the Alliance through encrypted channels. Her message was brief but electrifying. "We have information you seek." Ilara wasted no time. She led a small delegation to meet Silora aboard a hidden Lumine outpost, a shimmering structure suspended beneath the icy surface of a remote moon. As they entered the chamber, Silora greeted them, her translucent body glowing softly. "Your actions for the Vailith did not go unnoticed," she said, her melodic voice echoing faintly. "You fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. We wish to aid you." Silora revealed damning evidence, classified Council documents proving the arms smuggling accusations against Earth were fabricated. The fabrication had been orchestrated by a powerful corporate syndicate seeking to eliminate competition from human trade routes. Even worse, the documents exposed how the Council routinely ignored atrocities committed by these corporations in exchange for bribes and political favors. "This is it," Quan whispered, his eyes wide as he scanned the files. "This proves everything." Ilara felt a surge of vindication, but also caution. "If we release this now, they'll know who gave it to us. The Lumine will become targets." Silora inclined her head gracefully. "Our survival depends on change. If exposing the truth brings justice, so be it." Back on Earth, plans were set into motion. Dr. Quan worked tirelessly to disseminate the evidence through secure networks, ensuring it reached sympathetic species and rebel factions. Meanwhile, Ilara prepared for the inevitable retaliation. The Council wouldn't take the exposure lightly. They would strike back hard. As the leaked documents began circulating, outrage simmered across the galaxy. Protests erupted on neutral worlds. Rogue traders disrupted Council supply lines. Even some Council-aligned species quietly distanced themselves, unwilling to be tainted by association. One evening, as Ilara stood on the bridge of the Aegis Dawn, watching Earth spin silently below, she allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. The road ahead was fraught with danger, but they had momentum now. Allies were rallying to their cause, and the Council's facade was beginning to crumble. "They thought they could silence us forever," she murmured to herself, her gaze fixed on the stars. "Instead, they made us stronger." The seeds of rebellion had been planted, and soon they would bloom into revolution. The aftermath of the Vailith liberation rippled across the galaxy like a shockwave. News of humanity's bold intervention spread through unofficial channels. Encrypted messages, smuggled data chips, and whispered rumors in shadowy cantinas. For the first time in decades, oppressed species and colonies dared to hope. The Free Systems Alliance wasn't just an idea anymore. It was a tangible force challenging the Council's iron grip. But defiance came at a cost. In the weeks following the operation, the Galactic Council issued harsh condemnations, branding humanity and its allies as terrorists. Corporate-controlled media painted the rescue mission as reckless aggression, twisting facts to justify their narrative. Yet, despite the propaganda, cracks began to form within the Council's ranks. Some alien delegates privately questioned whether suppressing rebellion with brute force was sustainable or even ethical. Captain Ilara Vance knew the fight was far from over. Back on Earth, she convened another meeting with her advisors, including Dr. Isaac Quan and General Marcus Hale. "They're scared," Ilara said, leaning forward on the table. "Scared enough to call us terrorists. That means we're hitting where it hurts." Quan nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Fear is good. It shows they're vulnerable. But fear alone won't bring them down. We need proof, evidence that exposes their corruption to the entire galaxy." It was then that an unexpected ally emerged, the Lumine. A bioluminescent aquatic race similar to the Vailith, but far more advanced, the Lumine had long operated in secret, avoiding entanglement with the Council. Their ambassador, Silora, contacted the Alliance through encrypted channels. Her message was brief but electrifying. "We have information you seek." Ilara wasted no time. She led a small delegation to meet Silora aboard a hidden Lumine outpost, a shimmering structure suspended beneath the icy surface of a remote moon. As they entered the chamber, Silora greeted them, her translucent body glowing softly. "Your actions for the Valeth did not go unnoticed," she said, her melodic voice echoing faintly. "You fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. We wish to aid you." Silora revealed damning evidence, classified council documents proving the arms smuggling accusations against Earth were fabricated. The fabrication had been orchestrated by a powerful corporate syndicate seeking to eliminate competition from human trade routes. Even worse, the documents exposed how the Council routinely ignored atrocities committed by these corporations in exchange for bribes and political favors. "This is it," Quan whispered, his eyes wide as he scanned the files. "This proves everything." Ilara felt a surge of vindication, but also caution. "If we release this now, they'll know who gave it to us. The Luminae will become targets." Silora inclined her head gracefully. "Our survival depends on change. If exposing the truth brings justice, so be it." Back on Earth, plans were set into motion. Dr. Quan worked tirelessly to disseminate the evidence through secure networks, ensuring it reached sympathetic species and rebel factions. Meanwhile, Ilara prepared for the inevitable retaliation. The Council wouldn't take the exposure lightly. They would strike back hard. As the leaked documents began circulating, outrage simmered across the galaxy. Protests erupted on neutral worlds. Rogue traders disrupted Council supply lines. Even some Council-aligned species quietly distanced themselves, unwilling to be tainted by association. One evening, as Ilara stood on the bridge of the Aegis Dawn, watching Earth spin silently below, she allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. The road ahead was fraught with danger, but they had momentum now. Allies were rallying to their cause, and the Council's facade was beginning to crumble. "They thought they could silence us forever," she murmured to herself, her gaze fixed on the stars. "Instead, they made us stronger." The seeds of rebellion had been planted, and soon they would bloom into revolution. The evidence was undeniable. Thousands of pages of classified council documents, recordings of secret meetings, and incriminating financial transactions painted a clear picture. Humanity had been framed. Dr. Isaac Quan stood in the dim glow of his workstation aboard the Aegis Dawn, double-checking every file one last time before transmitting them to the Galactic Council's central hub. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of what they were about to do. "This is it," he muttered under his breath. "This will change everything." Captain Ilara Vance paced nearby, her boots clicking softly against the metal floor. She glanced at Quan, then at the holographic display showing the council chambers, a place she hadn't set foot in since their expulsion. It felt surreal to think that justice might finally be within reach. "We're ready," Quan announced, turning to face her. "Every piece of evidence has been tagged, encrypted, and time-stamped. They can't deny this." Ilara nodded, her expression grim but determined. "Send it." With a few keystrokes, the data packet was transmitted directly to the Council's public archive system, bypassing layers of security thanks to Luminae-provided encryption protocols. Within minutes, the galaxy erupted. On neutral worlds, news feeds lit up with headlines. "Council corruption exposed." Rogue traders and dissident factions shared the files across encrypted networks, ensuring the truth reached even the most isolated corners of the galaxy. Protests broke out on planets once loyal to the Council, as citizens demanded answers. Even some Council-aligned species began questioning their leaders' integrity. But the Council didn't respond immediately. Instead, silence hung heavy over the galaxy for nearly 2 days. Then came the official statement, a curt dismissal claiming the evidence was fabricated by terrorist elements seeking to destabilize galactic order. The Council refused to acknowledge any wrongdoing or entertain the possibility of reopening Earth's case. "They won't listen," Ilara said bitterly during an emergency meeting aboard the Aegis Dawn. Her voice carried both frustration and resolve. "They don't care about the truth. All they care about is holding on to power." Ambassador Rylan Cross, seated nearby, leaned forward. Then we take the fight to them. Not just militarily, but legally. If they won't give us a trial, we'll create our own court. A tribunal where the oppressed can hold the powerful accountable. Quan raised an eyebrow. And who decides the rules? Us. Yes, Ryland replied firmly. We use the principles we've been building, the foundations of the Free Systems Alliance, to draft new laws based on fairness, transparency, and justice. We broadcast the proceedings live across the galaxy. Let everyone see what real accountability looks like. Ilara considered the idea, her mind racing. It was risky, potentially catastrophic if it failed, but it could also galvanize support for their cause. Do it, she said finally. Let's show them what happens when you silence the innocent. Over the next week, the Free Systems Alliance assembled its tribunal. Representatives from allied species, including the Vailith and the Lumina, joined human delegates in drafting procedures. Charges were formally filed against key council members and corporate executives implicated in the conspiracy. Witnesses, many risking their lives, came forward to testify. On the day of the tribunal, billions tuned in via unauthorized broadcasts. Holographic screens flickered to life in market squares, cantinas, and hidden bunkers. As the evidence unfolded, shockwaves rippled through the galaxy. For the first time, the Council's corruption was laid bare for all to see. When the final verdict was announced, guilty on all counts, the galaxy held its breath. The Council remained silent, unable or unwilling to respond. But Ilara knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Justice isn't given, she told her crew later that night. It's taken. And humanity intended to take it, all the way to the stars. The tribunal had sent shockwaves through the galaxy, but shockwaves alone weren't enough to topple the Galactic Council. Captain Ilara Vance knew that justice required more than words. It demanded action. And so, as the Council continued to ignore the tribunal's verdict, the Free Systems Alliance prepared for its most daring operation yet, a direct strike against one of the Council's strongest holds. The target was Zarnok Prime, a heavily fortified moon orbiting the gas giant Scifi. It served as both a trade hub and a military outpost, funneling resources to Council-aligned corporations while housing thousands of enslaved workers from oppressed species. For years, it had been untouchable, a symbol of the Council's dominance. But now, it would become the symbol of resistance. Ilara stood on the bridge of the Aegis Dawn, her sharp eyes scanning tactical displays. Around her, the hum of activity filled the air as crew members worked tirelessly to coordinate the assault. The fleet wasn't large by Council standards, just 20 ships, cobbled together from salvaged parts and ingenuity. But each vessel carried determination far greater than its firepower. This isn't just about winning, Ilara said during a final briefing with her commanders. It's about showing the galaxy what we stand for. If we can free Zarnok Prime, we prove that the Council's days are numbered. General Marcus Hale nodded grimly. And if we fail, then we go down fighting, Ilara replied without hesitation. But we don't fail. The operation began under cover of darkness, or as close to it as space allowed. Stealth drones deploy ahead of the main fleet, disabling sensor arrays and jamming communications. By the time the Council realized they were under attack, the first wave of Alliance ships had already breached the outer defenses. Inside the command center of the Aegis Dawn, chaos reigned. Alarms blared as enemy fighters swarmed toward their position. Lieutenant Cole barked orders, directing countermeasures while keeping a steady stream of updates flowing to Ilara. She remained calm, her voice cutting through the noise like steel. Focus fire on the docking bay, she commanded. We need those gates open for ground teams. Below, General Hale led the ground assault alongside squads of human soldiers and Vailith volunteers. Armed with improvised weapons and sheer resolve, they stormed the facility, freeing enslaved workers and sabotaging production lines. The sight of captives being liberated ignited cheers among the newly freed, many of whom joined the fight immediately. Meanwhile, in orbit, the battle raged fiercely. Outnumbered and outgunned, the Alliance fleet relied on unconventional tactics to hold their ground. Salvage tugs converted into mobile repair stations patched damaged ships mid-combat, while decoy drones drew enemy fire away from critical targets. Every move was calculated, every sacrifice meaningful. As the tide turned, something unexpected happened. Reinforcements arrived. Ships bearing the insignias of rogue traders, defected council species, and even some disillusioned corporate factions entered the fray. Word of the operation had spread, inspiring others to join the cause. Together, they overwhelmed the remaining council forces. By dawn, or rather, the artificial simulation of it within the station, the facility was secured. Thousands of freed prisoners gathered in the central plaza, their faces etched with gratitude and awe. Ilara addressed them via hologram, her voice echoing across the chamber. "We are the Free Systems Alliance," she declared. "No longer will you suffer under tyranny. From this day forward, you have allies who will stand with you, not because it's profitable, but because it's right." The victory at Zarnak Prime became legend. News of the liberation spread faster than the Council could suppress it, igniting hope across the galaxy. More species pledged allegiance to the Alliance, swelling its ranks. Oppressed colonies rose up against their oppressors, emboldened by humanity's example. Back aboard the Aegis Dawn, Ilara gazed at the battered but triumphant fleet. "This is how you win wars," she murmured to herself. "Not with brute force, but with courage and conviction." The galaxy was watching, and slowly it was beginning to believe. Victory at Zarnak Prime had been a turning point, but it came with a price. The Free Systems Alliance was growing stronger, its message of hope resonating across the galaxy. Yet, as Captain Ilara Vance returned to Earth, she found herself facing an enemy far more insidious than the Council's fleets: doubt. Not everyone on Earth shared her vision. While most citizens rallied behind the Alliance, some factions questioned whether humanity should risk everything for alien species in distant colonies. "We're barely surviving ourselves," argued Senator Clara Hayes during an emergency session in the Global Assembly Hall. Her voice carried anger and fear, echoing through the crowded chamber. "Every ship we send out is one less defending our own planet. Every resource we share means less for us." Ilara stood near the back of the room, arms crossed, listening intently. She understood the concerns. Earth's recovery was fragile, its resources stretched thin. But she also knew that retreating inward would doom their cause. The Alliance wasn't just about survival, it was about building something better, something lasting. "You think isolation will keep us safe?" Ambassador Rylan Cross countered sharply, rising from his seat. His tone was calm but firm. "The Council already tried to crush us once. If we stop now, they'll finish the job. Our strength lies in unity, not division." The debate raged on, dividing not only politicians but ordinary citizens. Protests erupted in cities worldwide, some chanting slogans of solidarity with the Alliance, others demanding Earth focus solely on itself. Social media feeds became battlegrounds of ideology, each side accusing the other of betrayal. Amid this turmoil, a new threat emerged, one born not from outside, but within. A faction calling themselves the Terra First Movement gained traction, advocating for humanity to sever ties with alien allies and fortify Earth against further conflict. Their leader, a charismatic former military officer named Commander Elias Drake, delivered impassioned speeches warning of overreach. "We can't save the galaxy if we destroy ourselves in the process," he declared during a rally broadcast lived to millions. "Earth comes first." Ilara watched the broadcast from her quarters aboard the Aegis Dawn, her jaw tightening with every word. Drake's rhetoric struck a chord with many, exploiting fears of scarcity and uncertainty. Worse still, intelligence reports suggested Terra First operatives were sabotaging Alliance efforts, tampering with supply lines, spreading misinformation, even infiltrating key installations. when an orbital defense platform malfunctioned, nearly causing catastrophic damage to a nearby colony ship. Evidence pointed to Terra First involvement. The incident shocked the public and deepened divisions. Allies began questioning humanity's reliability, while critics used the event to argue that Earth couldn't handle leadership on such a grand scale. Determined to prevent further fractures, Ilara called an emergency meeting with her closest advisors. Around the table sat Dr. Isaac Kwan, General Marcus Hale, and Ryland Cross, all weary but resolute. "If we don't address this now," Ilara said, her voice low but urgent, "it will tear us apart." Kwan leaned forward, his expression grim. "We need transparency. Show people why what we're doing matters, not just for aliens, but for us. Highlight the benefits of cooperation." Hale nodded. "And we deal with Terra First directly. They're a cancer. If we let them grow, they'll kill everything we've built." Ilara agreed. That night, she recorded a message to be broadcast globally. Standing before a simple backdrop emblazoned with the Free Systems Alliance insignia, she spoke plainly but passionately. "I know times are hard. I know there's fear. But turning inward won't protect us. It will isolate us. What we're building isn't just about helping others. It's about securing our future. Together, we're stronger. Divided, we fall." Her words sparked renewed debate, but they also reignited hope for many. Slowly, cracks in Terra First's influence began to form. Allies reaffirmed their support, pledging aid to stabilize Earth's recovery efforts. Still, the danger lingered. As Ilara gazed at the stars beyond her viewport, she whispered softly, "Unity is fragile, but worth fighting for." Earth remained divided, but the fight for its soul was far from over. The final battle for the galaxy's future was inevitable. The Council, enraged by humanity's audacity and the growing influence of the Free Systems Alliance, mobilized its largest armada yet. A colossal fleet bristling with weapons, led by the Zarnok warlord General Voreth, a hulking brute known for his unyielding ferocity. Their destination: the shattered remains of an ancient Dyson sphere orbiting a dying star, a place steeped in myth and history, symbolizing the hubris of fallen empires. Captain Ilara Vance stood on the bridge of the Aegis Dawn, staring at the swirling debris field on her view screen. The Dyson sphere had once been a marvel of engineering, a structure that harnessed the energy of an entire sun to power civilizations across multiple systems. Now it was little more than ruins, a graveyard of forgotten ambitions. Yet its location made it strategically vital. Whoever controlled it could dominate nearby hyperspace lanes and choke off supply routes. Ilara turned to her crew, her voice steady but resolute. "This isn't just about winning territory," she said. "It's about proving something. To them, and to ourselves." The odds were staggering. The Council's forces outnumbered the Alliance nearly 3-1. But what they lacked in numbers, the Alliance compensated for with ingenuity, determination, and unity. Ships from allied species formed the backbone of their fleet. Velith submersibles retrofitted for space combat. Lumini vessels glowing like living stars, rogue traders wielding salvaged Council tech. Even Earth's battered fleet, patched together with scrap metal and sheer willpower, was ready to fight. As the two fleets converged, the void between them erupted into chaos. Laser fire streaked across the battlefield, lighting up the darkness. Explosions bloomed like supernovas as ships collided or succumbed to enemy fire. The Aegis Dawn danced through the fray, its agile maneuvers keeping it just ahead of destruction. Lieutenant Cole barked orders, coordinating evasive patterns while targeting key enemy vessels. General Marcus Hale led ground teams aboard captured Council ships, turning them into mobile command centers. "Keep pushing," he shouted over comms, rallying soldiers who fought alongside alien allies. Together, they repelled boarding parties and sabotaged critical systems, buying precious time for the fleet to regroup. Midway through the battle, a pivotal moment arrived. Dr. Isaac Kwan activated the Quantum Codex, a revolutionary AI-driven legal framework designed to replace the Council's corrupt statutes. Through hacked communication channels, the Codex broadcast live across the galaxy, offering amnesty and partnership to any who embraced its principles of fairness, transparency, and mutual aid. "We don't have to destroy you to win," Ilara declared in a message transmitted directly to the Council fleet. Her voice carried both strength and compassion. "Join us. Help us build a better future for everyone." Her words struck a chord. Several Council-aligned species, already disillusioned by years of exploitation, began defecting mid-battle. Entire squadrons peeled away from the main force, their captains broadcasting their allegiance to the Alliance. The tide began to turn, not because of superior firepower, but because of shared hope. General Voreth, furious and desperate, ordered a full retreat. As the remaining Council ships flowed into hyperspace, the battlefield fell silent. Victory belonged to the Alliance, but Ilara knew this was only the beginning. Back aboard the Aegis Dawn, she gazed at the wreckage of the Dyson sphere, its broken rings spinning slowly against the backdrop of eternal night. "They thought we were reckless," she murmured. "But sometimes recklessness is what it takes to change the world." The galaxy had witnessed the clash of ideologies and chosen a side. The era of oppression was ending. A new dawn awaited. The war was over. The Council, fractured and discredited, retreated into obscurity, its once unshakable grip on the galaxy reduced to rubble. In its place stood the Free Systems Alliance, a coalition born not of conquest but of hope, forged in the fires of defiance and tempered by sacrifice. Humanity, once cast out as pariahs, now found itself at the forefront of a new era. Captain Ilara Vance stepped onto the grand stage of the rebuilt Galactic Council chamber, her silver uniform gleaming under restored crystal chandeliers. Around her, representatives from dozens of species gathered, some familiar allies like the Vailith and Luminae, others newcomers inspired by humanity's vision. The room buzzed with anticipation, a stark contrast to the cold silence that had greeted Earth's expulsion years earlier. Ilara approached the central podium, her presence commanding yet humble. She looked out at the assembled delegates, their faces reflecting a mix of awe, gratitude, and cautious optimism. For many, this moment marked the first time they dared to dream of equality, not just for themselves, but for all sentient beings. "We stand here today," she began, her voice ringing clear across the chamber, "not as conquerors, but as builders. Not as rulers, but as partners. The old ways, the corruption, the greed, the oppression, they are gone. But we must be vigilant. Freedom is fragile, and it demands our constant care." Her words resonated deeply. Behind her, holographic displays showcased the Quantum Codex, now fully operational and serving as the foundation for galactic law. Its principles were simple yet profound. Fairness, transparency, mutual aid, and collective decision-making. No longer would power rest in the hands of a few elite species. Every voice mattered, every contribution counted. But Ilara didn't stop there. Turning toward the audience, she addressed those watching via live broadcasts across the galaxy. Billions tuned in from neutral worlds, liberated colonies, and even former Council strongholds. To those still suffering under remnants of the old system, she said, her tone unwavering, "Know this. You are not alone. We will fight alongside you until every chain is broken. Until every being can walk freely among the stars." Cheers erupted throughout the chamber, echoed by celebrations on countless planets. Yet Ilara remained grounded, aware that challenges lay ahead. Rebuilding trust would take time, and scars left by centuries of exploitation wouldn't heal overnight. Still, the momentum was undeniable. Species long divided now worked together to restore devastated ecosystems, dismantle oppressive regimes, and share resources equitably. Back on Earth, life flourished anew. Cities once ravaged by shortages now thrived with innovation and cooperation. Schools taught children about unity and resilience, instilling values of compassion and curiosity. Spaceports bustled with activity as humans and aliens traveled freely, exchanging ideas and forging friendships. As the ceremony concluded, Ilara stood outside the council chambers, gazing at the shimmering expanse of stars beyond the viewport. Beside her, Dr. Isaac Kwan smiled faintly. "You did it," he said softly. "Against all odds, you changed everything." Ilara shook her head, her expression thoughtful. "Not me," she replied. "All of us. This wasn't my victory. It was ours." In the distance, ships bearing the insignia of the Free Systems Alliance soared through hyperspace, carrying ambassadors, engineers, and explorers to every corner of the galaxy. Humanity's journey had begun in exile, marked by betrayal and hardship, but it ended with them leading the charge toward a brighter, united future. The galaxy no longer feared humanity. It admired them. And as the stars twinkled beyond the viewport, one truth became clear. When given a chance, humanity chose not to rule, but to inspire.